Thanks for joining us at another Sisters Talk here on Granny's Front Porch. Today it's Emily and Jennifer, and we're going to discuss, mainly Jennifer is going to share some of the supernatural childhood experiences she had growing up here at the Troyville Earthworks site. Of course, right now it is Jonesville, Louisiana, but hey, Jen.
Hey, so I'm not really sure what the site was called. And as we've mentioned in other videos, there's still a lot to be learned about the Troyville Earthworks right there in the old downtown area of Jonesville, Louisiana. But we grew up in a house that was very, very close to the embankment near the little river, near what we see on maps to be Mound 8, that they haven't really located Mound 8. A lot of the other mounds are known where they are, but I don't think it's been definitively identified where Mound 8 is, but in that general area is where we grew up. And like I've mentioned in other videos, I did not know the history of that area. I did not know that it was an ancient Native American site when we were growing up there. I actually did not know that until about 2014. My parents never talked about it that I can remember. Never was talked about in school. I mean, I just found out as an adult. I always felt very attracted to the space. Had a lot of deep feelings about it, but I didn't know any of that. And Krista and Emily have mentioned in other videos that I was a scaredy cat and that we all slept in the same bed on that site that was near Mound 8 in Granny's old house. I was always asleep in the middle. And the reason was because of things that I saw. Now, my dad also had this site that he would see things. And he actually told me that up until when he was married, he would still be what people call afraid of the dark because of things that he saw in the dark. And particularly in that space, I would see when the lights were out, I would see points of light floating around, little dots of light. Sometimes it would be shadowy things just floating around the room, swirly things made of light just flying around the room. So that stuff always creeped me out. And when I tried to talk to my parents about it, I remember being very young and being afraid, and they told me that it was demons. So we were in a very religious church at that time, and they didn't have a point of reference to help me see it any other way. And they also said because I was sometimes a very precocious child that's probably why the demons were messing with me. But anyway, so that didn't help me because I couldn't get rid of the seeing the things, and then that made it seem like it something bad, and also that it was something I was being punished for. But I've made peace with it in a different way because I still continue to have experiences my whole life. And when I bought the property back in 2014, it wasn't the same house, but it was the same piece of land. And I continued that. I picked that back up of seeing very much the similar things as an adult that I saw as a kid. When the lights are out there at night, you could see points of light, you could see shadowy figures, sometimes during the day. I mean, I've always seen those things, and I see those things also not just there, but certainly there. That's just a good intro.
I haven't seen anything here, but when you were still living here at the property and I moved in, I remember there were certain areas of the house that spooked me.
Yeah.
And that, but I don't sense any of that here anymore.
Yeah.
I haven't really ever experienced anything here. I experience more when I'm out at the Manifest property.
Yeah.
That's where I experience. Mine is mainly tingling of the hands. So I'm getting it right now, just thinking about it. So, but when I'm in that space, mine's been more of a feeling. It's always through the hands. but I don't really see. I've tried to go in the rooms that Jennifer's mentioned to see.
Well, when we found when you found the $100 bill that when nobody knows where it came from, it was towards the back of the house where the laundry room, breakfast room is. What
Yeah,
I've noticed is the further back we get on the lot is where the energy is the strongest.
and that's the area that creeps me out.
And
Always the back of the house.
yeah, and it's the same whether you're upstairs or downstairs. Like
Even the old house.
yeah, the closer you get to the back, which makes me think that Mound 8 might be somewhere closer that way.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Or maybe, it was a long, from the pictures I've seen, it was kind of a long, what's the word I'm trying to say? Not square, rectangular. That was kind of adjacent to the river.
Was it a square? I will post it.
I want to think it was, what I've seen, it looks like a rectangle that,
Okay.
that was somewhere in that,
Yeah.
it was out of the embankment. It was on the outside of the embankment, and it was one of the only mounds that I've seen in any depictions that was on the outside of the embankment instead of inside the embankment, which makes me wonder what the significance of that was. I mean, why would there be a mound on the outside when all the others were on the inside?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Makes me wonder why it was on the outside of the embankment. And I guess we'll have to you'd have to look, because the embankment went around the whole ceremonial complex. It was like surrounding the whole corner there where the four rivers came together. And then at this part, then, Mound 8 was on the outside of the ceremonial complex. And that's kind of where our property is and where I experienced a lot of things.
That's
true.
Yeah. You when you go outside, is that back corner near I'm going to try.
I'm very attracted to that back corner. That's
That's
also where you saw that big remember you saw that big red salamander crawl out of that tree back there?
Huge salamander crawling out of a tree.
Yeah, I wish you had a picture of that.
I know.
Yeah.
I've seen it before. Or since. But no, we've had little ceremonies in the backyard back there, and Krista does Reiki, so we've had some Reiki sessions and some we even spent time digging in the backyard to see if we find hidden treasure, but that hasn't.
I need to do some LiDAR or some ground penetrating radar, I think. Because there's too many like old rusty nails and stuff.
Yes.
If we try to use the typical little metal detectors, it's just too much.
But as a child, that part of the backyard was where an old fig tree was. I mean, I don't know if it was close to the area.
Yeah.
And I have since planted a fig tree.
I know, I'm so excited to see it. Are there any figs coming up?
I think I've seen a couple of green ones, but I don't go out there that often. That they may have been taken. If they did, they're not ripe yet.
Okay.
My apple trees, I'm trying to plant an orchard, but it's just like a tree here, a tree there. A fruit tree. The 2 apples have not made it, so I'm gonna have to dig those up. But the fig and the plum look great. So, but I just wanted to state that the fig tree in the back was plain under the branches of the fig tree.
Yeah, we used to play squirrel. It had a big
magical.
hollow space underneath, and we would play squirrel back there all the time.
Yeah.
Whatever squirrel is.
Yeah.
build little houses, and yeah, really nice energy back there. But I also had, when I was about 4 years old, we had lived in a little house that used to be, I think it's an empty lot now, but it used to be right across from an old movie theater on Front Street. Is that
Yeah, and I can't remember the name of the movie theater, but I've seen pictures lately of it.
Yeah, used to have the Phillips dry goods store in there that Granny worked at for a while. But anyway, we lived in a little white house that used to be across from there. And oddly enough, I think that it's kind of lines up with the Great Mound. And also, which
Oh,
I think the Great Mound was Mound 5, and then going towards the north of the Great Mound, which I think the Great Mound faced east, right? I'm not sure. I'm just
sure
thinking
sounds good to me.
from what I'm seeing. But if you would go north of the Great Mound, there was another mound called Mound 6, I believe, that was kind of also close to where we live across, I mean, but it was inside the embankment, kind of near Mound 8. So if you think about Mound 5 and Mound 6 kind of lining up and making this, in a
Oh,
northerly direction,
yeah.
we stayed in that little house that was somewhere between Mound 5 and Mound 6. And when I was 4 years old, I started to see, I mean, there was a lot of things that I would see in the dark that I did not understand. So it was very kind of scary. But the one big thing I want to talk about was one night when I saw a Black Panther approached me, which was one of the most scary and also meaningful times of my childhood, because it was such a strange experience. But this would be like 1973, 1974. And so one night I was laying in our bedroom that was in the front of that little house, and I looked up, and I was not asleep, but because I would lay in bed just scared at night a lot. But this jaguar started running toward me. It was black, and it was like, it made no sound, but its mouth was making the motion as if it was growling and running towards me. And then I screamed, and when I screamed, it broke into little tiny pixels, like on a computer screen, which I think is really weird because I had never seen pixels on a computer screen. So I had no point of reference for pixels, right? But that's what I saw in 1974. And then later when computers came out and I could see things break into pixels, I was like, wow, that's what the Jaguar did that was running towards me on that site. And so later when I grew up and I realized, I found out that it was a Native American site, and I started looking about where all the mounds were, and I started thinking about that experience and how often animals had a lot to played an important part in Native American ceremonies and rituals and things. And so I started to think that maybe that was something that I was seeing that was of a residual, spiritual meaning to the site, which I have not been able to really figure that out yet. But
Do you recall if Dad had any of these similar experiences as a young adult or a man when
oh, he told me he saw things in the dark and that things would pull covers off his feet and stuff when he was a kid. But that was I think that was in Oklahoma when
but
he
he
had
really
most of
didn't
it.
experience things here at this house.
No, and if he did not talk about it or share it with me because mom and dad were trying to squelch that in me. They didn't really know how to frame it. And no matter how much, I mean, I tried to shut that down in myself too. I tried to shut it down. I shut it down so hard. I think I said this in another video. I shut it down so hard. What I had to do to shut down that information that would come to me was it also shut down my common sense.
Yes.
And then I began to realize it through my adult life and my young adult life that shutting those parts of myself down actually was not good for me, because I found myself making a lot of mistakes and getting in a lot of unhealthy relationships and just doing things. And I realized that was part of who I am. I needed to embrace it because I need my intuition to make good choices. So I decided not to shut my intuition out anymore. And for me, part of the intuition is those experiences that I have. And I'm just saying that the Jonesville site has a lot of energy there from. So I am able to actually see a lot, and I'd be interested to know, what the I mean, I've had so many things. There's a lot of things that I won't talk about because they would just be too weird for most people to
We
handle.
won't talk about it this episode.
Yeah, because what I've already said is already weird enough.
No, I shut down and I, I'm just like, if I were to open myself up, like I just got a little reminder just from mama, you don't have your earrings on. I'd put my earrings on.
Yeah,
I don't
she
wear
said, always wear
earrings.
your earrings.
I don't wear earrings or my ring or anything lately. And I've only started putting them back in where I've kind of had to retrain my ears. So I felt that I need to wear the earrings. This is my way of showing, respect to my mother. This is my, I'm wearing the earrings today.
Yes.
Or when we do these talks, I put on the earrings.
Well, Mama said she had some experiences on the site when she was a kid
Yeah,
too.
share that if you have any.
All I know is that she would see things walking on the levee.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's all. That's all. And the levee was like right near the house, the old house that used to be there. And there's probably a lot of people in town who may have had experiences. A lot of people probably wouldn't want to talk about it. But one thing I will say about the site is I've noticed that it's very moody. The site, I feel very closely emotionally connected to the site, and I know a lot of people have very fond memories of Jonesville, and I want to say that those good times when Jonesville was a nice place to live, when it was more economically prosperous, the good old days everybody always talks about on those Facebook groups, that's part of the energy of Jonesville. But there's also the part of the energy that is the sadness of the destruction that happened there. And there are times that I can be on the site and I can feel the deep sadness. It's like a mother who's lost her children. It's like a mother who's, they long for the good old days. But maybe the site is ready for something, some resolution to happen, some healing to happen over the devastation that happened there. Maybe the good old days won't come back until we right this wrong.
Yeah,
that was done there, and none of us did it. I mean, it was all done I'm talking about the destruction of Troyville.
I was aware.
Troyville Earthworks.
Oh yeah, no, that's good too. But well, we're hoping it was the good old days. Do we really know everything that went on?
No, I'm talking about the good old days when Mama was a kid, because everybody.
I thought you said the good old days of Troyville, and I was.
Well, there was somebody who told me one time that their grandfather was Cherokee, and this was from a man that lived there in Jonesville who had spoken to his grandfather, who said he knew some things about the site and that it was in the long time ago. It was a place of worship, but it also was because they didn't separate their economy from their worship. You know what I'm saying? It was like all together, that on the site you were not supposed to be greedy.
Right.
And see, I think that's one thing that's wrong with Jonesville is this greed is something that has maybe hurt that place a little bit.
There's no greed in any other town around here though.
No, but you know what I mean. It was a greed that destroyed the site.
That's true. That's true.
It wasn't allowed. You could actually be killed for I think it was very important. There were certain, ways you were supposed to be because it was a sacred place. And that great fire that burned there all the time. I also heard that there was a great fire on the Great Mound that burned all the time. And there were people who watched the fire. And, that probably had religious significance, but it probably also had, like being a lighthouse to those four rivers.
Yes. Jen, I think I heard you mention that you had read something about that. Do you want to share that reading with us?
Right. Yes. When I was doing some research about the Troyville mounds, I found a bulletin that was written by Winslow M. Walker, who was the archaeologist who worked for the Smithsonian in the 1930s. And he's the one that tried to come and do an emergency excavation of the mounds before it was destroyed in the early 30s. And he published a bulletin for the Smithsonian Institution, Bureau of American Ethnology, Bulletin 113. And this is an excerpt from page 9 that I read. And this is the part that just really had me so excited about the connection that it could possibly be to the tribe that we are citizens of, the Muskogee Creek. And also it references the Great Fire that we were just speaking about in the video. I'm going to start up here and I'm going to read it because a lot of times it's hard to read on these screens. So I'm going to read it. I'm going to start here. This is an excerpt from page 9 of the bulletin. It says, an interesting tradition concerning it is given. In 1819, Dr. J.M. Thompson visited the parish and was so impressed by the above-mentioned group that he made an effort to learn something more about it. And I think the group he's referring to are the mounds. It happened that while he was on a trip to Georgia, he was discussing these mounds and heard from an intelligent half-breed Creek Indian the following. I apologize for that terminology. Sounds kind of racist right now. The large mound at the mouth of a little river was called the Great Fire and was the central place of worship, as it was at the remarkable point where two rivers crossed or where one river ran across another. The Creek Indians formerly occupied this country in great numbers, but having become involved in a war, or rather being invaded by a very powerful tribe from the sea coast, they were overpowered and forced to leave their homes and favorite place of worship and retreat towards the east. Many of them betook themselves to boats and retreated down the river into the Mississippi, through into Lake Pontchartrain, and scattered abroad over the country now known as Alabama and Georgia, and where they were found by the first white people.
Ooh.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Interesting.
That's what makes me feel just so amazed about how Daddy having the Creek ancestry and we end up living on this site again. Yeah. So anyway,
Alabama.
seems kind of fantastical, doesn't it?
It does. Yes, yes.
And so, I think it'd be awesome to have restore the fire there somehow. And I know that there is private property where Mound 5 was right now, in a church. I think the Catholic Church is on Mound 5, but it would be nice to have, things eventually, maybe years down the road, maybe after I'm dead, maybe some of those things can be restored. And I know you can't put the mounds back, but you can definitely restore the energy.
Well, hopefully you're doing it right now.
It's important to me. It's one of my life missions.
Well, I mean, I think awareness helps.
Yeah. I don't feel it's my responsibility to get out there and fight for it. I tried that approach once and it just doesn't go anywhere because egos get involved. And then I start looking in, why do I have an ego and who am I to say what should happen? Because people who are alive there now and who live here now have a say as well. It's not just one person's say or one tribe say or one group of people say, but I will say that I think my whole purpose is just to hold space for what can happen. And I don't even know what should or can happen, but I will hold space. And every once in a while I'll put out some comments or some information, but not to assert my ego about the situation, but just the love in my heart for that space.
Yes.
Just hold the love in my heart for that space.
So do you think that are you aware of any other family members that possibly had it other than our parents? Did any of the grandmothers have a similar knowing or experience or able to see things? Are you aware of any stories from our grandparents?
All I know is that Papa Bill would sit on the side porch that faced the river and talk to the owls.
Which,
That's not really supernatural, but it's like,
but owls
no.
are death, right? Don't you see owls? It's
It can mean different things to different societies. I don't know.
correct. But that is neat.
But he, I will say that I never knew the man, but I could feel his energy very strong there. And he died there up on the levee at the end of the street where the street meets the levee. He had a path that he would walk down to his fishing line. He had fish trot lines down there, I heard. And I know he died on that spot. That's kind of near between where Mound 8 and Mound 6 would be. And I often can feel him. And I feel like sometimes when we do find the pennies that seem to just fall out. That's another thing. I've been in that kitchen here since I bought the property back, and pennies will just fall out of nowhere. And I'm like, not like pennies are worth anything, but I'm just like, where did that fall from? Because it could fall like right in front of me, and there's nothing that it could have fallen off of. And it might be a modern penny. It's not like an old penny. I'm just tell me about the date.
Those little people.
But it's further back on the back of the house side, just things like that. And I always, for some reason, I feel like that. Sometimes I feel like it's him. I think it's Papa Bill of Prairie.
Yeah.
The one that had the cafe.
Yeah, we had a big he had a big garden on the I wish I had my directions. I want to say it was on the northwest side of the house, but
I think that would be southwest.
all right, southwest side of the house. Oh yeah, this would be. So I remember the garden, and when I occasionally got there and had big high hopes of, I'm going to grow a garden this year, but I kind of just kind of let him. I was like, I kind of asked him, where should I plant things? And so I felt really, like I had a relationship, and really he helped me plant that garden. It was just kind of neat.
Aww.
A couple years ago, I didn't do it. You didn't tell me the right place for the apple tree, obviously.
Well, when I came back, I think it was the summer solstice. I was walking down the levee. I believe it was 2013 or 14. I have a video somewhere of it. And it was before I bought the property, and I had just not been down that levee or near that property in a very long time, maybe even a decade. And I remember the first time I walked, I had parked down at Magnolia Hill there on the corner, and I had walked down the levee towards the property. And I remember when I got to about that spot where he died, I wasn't even thinking about that's where he died, but he had a heart attack right there on that levee. I wasn't even thinking about it, but all of a sudden I could feel him and all of our great aunts and Granny. And I mean, it was so overwhelming that I broke down crying, that I could feel their presence. I could feel his presence. I'm still baffled about how I can feel him, and I never knew him in this life. But I can certainly feel him and his love. And he's, then it dawned on me that that's where he died. Ooh. Gives you the goosebumps.
It does.
But it was not a scary thing. It was in the middle of the day, and the cottonwood trees were blowing their tufts, and the wind was just blowing the trees. And I just felt like everybody was saying, welcome home, welcome home. We still love you. We're still here. How can you resist that?
That's true. That's true. You're talking about supernatural. I just wanted to, I started thinking about just playing outside and in our imagination, and how we had this place was it's very creative here.
Yeah.
I always construct towns in the dirt.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I'd spend all afternoon or get sticks or toilet paper and make furniture, or do the space planning of rooms, and I'd spend the whole time building, laying out, but I never played with it because it was like time to go to bed. So I just spent all the time building it, but I never really spent the time to, play with it.
Isn't it funny? Because a lot of my memories of that childhood in that space in that old house, but on the same space where you are now, is I remember being close to the floor, close to the ground. When you're a kid and you're on the ground, you're playing, you're always on the ground. And then those wood floors that used to be in that old house, I remember being on that floor a lot and playing. And Emily, that's really all I have. I mean, there's a whole lot of other stuff that I've
That's
experienced about the site. A lot of dreams, that I've had about the site, and that throughout my whole life. But those are very, those are probably a little much for people, and I'm actually still trying to interpret some of those myself. Yeah, it's a lot going on there that I think it's a little bit much. But yeah, there's something that's going on there energetically and spiritually that may even stretch back further than the Native Americans. I mean, it might be so deep that it's even before that. I've seen things before the mounds. I mean, it's been, and I will say that that's the one thing that I like about being there. I always feel like I'm in a timeless space when I'm there, and I always feel like that I can feel all the way back and all the way forward. I kind of feel like I'm in a suspended space.
Oh, that's a neat analogy.
Particularly when I am there by myself, which doesn't happen very often. If I can get an alone time, I can get into this space where I feel like I've always been there and I always will be there.
That's beautiful.
So that's how I feel about the place, and that's why I love it so much. I will say there's something very sacred about the site. There's something more than even any of the people that have lived there. It has to do with the landforms, and it has to do with the energy of the space and what happens when you have four rivers coming together. There's a lot of that going on too. And someone told me that way underneath the rivers there are crystal grids as well, like quartz crystal grids. So often I've heard from different people that when you have the rivers flowing, especially when they are coming together like that, that creates a drawdown energy. Okay, so one of the things that could help Jonesville is if you need to do things that uplift the energy, or you will have what's happening right now. Well, right now there's a big drawdown energy because there's not enough positive energy being given to counteract the drawdown energy. So, that's kind of what has to happen to make things turn around there. And it could happen in a variety of ways, just change the energy, because it's going to be a drawdown unless you do something like have ceremonies or, beautify the space, start taking care of it better, care about it, get the economy going again, whatever you need to do to turn the energy. It can be a variety of things. It could be Christians praying about it. It could be faith walks. It could be it just needs some kind of positive love to counteract the drawdown energy. That's all it needs.
Well, I do want to say, I believe there are people here that do try to.
Yes, I do see that. I do see that. And for some reason it's, and I think, and I love that, because everybody that's doing that has the same love I have.
Yeah. Yes.
Sometimes it's just like, I can't really explain why you love it so much.
That's true. That's true.
You don't really know why, but what does it matter?
All right.
So we decided that instead of just saying see you later, that we would want to end on a very positive note. This is from a Facebook post. I made the original post before I even bought the property. But I will begin with the newer post. On August 17, 2020, I wrote, I have since bought the house on my granny's old lot in Jonesville, Louisiana, and I have, along with the help of my little sister, been slowly repairing and remodeling the place. Sometimes dreams will haunt you until you act. Now for the rest, we shall see. And then 9 years before that, I had written this. This is before I bought the property. I had another dream last night about remodeling old things. I have had these dreams my whole life. I am usually trying to rebuild or remodel my granny's or my great-grandmother's old houses in Catahoula Parish when I have these dreams. Someone was building a playground for children. There were white, sleek-looking windmills in the distance. It was a marriage of rural, natural, earth elements, and modern elements. That was the part that stuck out the most. It was the homey, almost country feel, the familiarity and simplicity with the ease and sleek aspects of design and clean technology. There were lots of markets and items for sale, things very appealing to the eye. I remember someone selling a very rich, delicious coffee. Many, many people were shopping. Everyone had money to buy things, and everyone was shopping.
Oh, that's beautiful, Jen. I say that we should end everything with a dream that has come true.
Just a matter of time.
Again, thank y'all for joining us.